Everyone talks about Rome, but no one mentions the empire that could have rivaled it. When we think of empires that defined ancient history, names like Rome, Greece, Egypt, and Persia initially come to mind. Their military might, architectural feats, and cultural legacies are taught worldwide. Yet beyond the familiar scope of Western history lies a vast world of empires just as formidable, some even more economically or culturally powerful, but often overshadowed. One such empire thrived in the heart of West Africa, the Mali Empire. At its peak, it boasted unimaginable wealth, a sophisticated administrative structure, and intellectual centers that rivaled the great cities of the classical world. This is the story of the Mali Empire, an empire so rich and powerful that even Rome, for all its glory, would have taken notice. The rise of Mali, from obscurity to greatness. The Mali Empire rose in the 13th century CE, founded by the legendary warrior king Sundiata Keita after he defeated the Soso king, Sumanguru Kante, in the Battle of Kurina around 1235 CE. What began as a federation of small Mandinka kingdoms quickly expanded into one of the most influential empires in African history. At its height in the 14th century, Mali encompassed large swaths of present-day Mali, Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, Mauritania, and Burkina Faso. This vast territory was not only rich in land and resources, but also carefully governed through a blend of local autonomy and centralized power. While Rome controlled its empire through vast road networks and legions, Mali used trade routes, cultural cohesion, and diplomacy to knit together diverse peoples across thousands of miles. Wealth beyond imagination, the gold of Mali. Perhaps Mali's most astonishing claim to fame was its wealth, especially in gold. West Africa was one of the richest sources of gold in the pre-modern world. Mali sat right at the heart of these gold fields, controlling key mines such as those in Bambouk and Bouré. Unlike Rome, which relied heavily on conquest for expansion and economic dominance, Mali thrived primarily through trade. The empire's wealth became legendary thanks in part to Mansa Musa, who ruled from 1312 to 1337. Often regarded as the richest individual in world history, Mansa Musa's famous pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 put Mali on the map, literally. During his journey, he distributed so much gold across Cairo and the Middle East that it caused massive inflation and disrupted economies for over a decade. European cartographers, who had barely acknowledged sub-Saharan Africa before, began to feature Mali on maps, often marking Mansa Musa himself with a golden crown and a scepter. While Rome's economic power was impressive, no Roman emperor ever triggered economic collapse in a foreign land by sheer generosity. A hub of knowledge and culture, Timbuktu and beyond. Mali was not only rich, it was intellectually and culturally vibrant. The city of Timbuktu, which had existed as a trading post before being absorbed into the empire, grew into a renowned center of learning. It hosted the University of Sankore, one of the oldest in the world, and drew scholars, poets, and theologians from across Africa and the Islamic world. Thousands of manuscripts were written and preserved there, covering topics as diverse as astronomy, medicine, law, mathematics, and literature. While Rome gave us Cicero, Seneca, and Virgil, Mali's scholars were producing their own intellectual giants, like Ahmed Baba, a 16th century scholar who authored over 40 books. This flowering of culture and knowledge challenges the Eurocentric view that Africa lacks civilization. Mali's urban centers were not only hubs of commerce, but also of education and philosophical inquiry, creating a society where knowledge was treasured as much as wealth. Political sophistication and administration. One of the hallmarks of Rome's greatness was its intricate system of governance, legal codes, and military structure. Yet the Mali Empire also developed a remarkably effective administrative system, albeit less documented in Western records. The emperor, or Mansa, was at the center of a highly organized hierarchy. He appointed governors called farbas to oversee provinces, administer justice, and collect taxes. There was a strong emphasis on oral tradition and the use of griots, professional storytellers and historians who preserved Mali's legacy and ensured laws and moral codes were transmitted from generation to generation. This system of governance emphasized social order, loyalty, and tradition. While Rome used inscriptions and legal documents, Mali used memory and the spoken word, a method no less effective in a society where literacy wasn't universal. Trade networks that rivaled Rome's roads. Rome's famed road system allowed goods, soldiers, and messages to travel efficiently across the empire. But Mali too had an extensive trade network, only instead of stone roads, it used vast caravan routes that connected West Africa with North Africa and the Middle East. Camel caravans transported salt, gold, ivory, and slaves across the Sahara Desert, linking cities like Timbuktu and Gao with Cairo, Marrakech, and beyond. These routes weren't just commercial, they were cultural arteries through which ideas, art, and religion flowed. The Mali Empire became a key player in the trans-Saharan trade, and its ports along the Niger River further facilitated commerce. Traders from as far as Venice and Genoa eventually became aware of the wealth coming out of West Africa. Why then is Mali forgotten? If the Mali Empire was so wealthy, educated, and vast, why isn't it as well known as Rome? Part of the reason lies in bias within historical recording. Much of what we know about ancient civilizations comes from written records, often Greek, Roman, or later European historians who naturally focused on their own cultures. Since Mali's history was largely preserved orally and through Arabic texts, Western academia ignored or undervalued it for centuries. European colonizers often portrayed Africa as a continent without history, civilization, or sophistication to justify exploitation and control, glorifying empires like Rome while erasing or minimizing African achievements served those political ends. Only recently, through archaeology, African scholarship, and the preservation of ancient manuscripts, has the world begun to appreciate just how advanced and powerful the Mali Empire truly was. Other forgotten giants, Aksum and the Hittites. While Mali stands out for its wealth and cultural vibrancy, it's worth noting that Mali wasn't alone. The ancient African empire of Aksum, located in present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, once rivaled the Byzantine Empire in trade and architecture. It was one of the earliest Christian empires and developed a unique script and coinage. The Hittites, based in Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, were a Bronze Age powerhouse who pioneered ironworking and once fought the mighty Egyptians to a standstill at the Battle of Kadesh. Yet they too have largely faded from popular imagination. These civilizations, Aksum, the Hittites, Mali, were not footnotes to Rome's grandeur. They were parallel powers, often more advanced in specific fields like metallurgy, theology, or economics. Legacy and lessons. The Mali Empire eventually declined in the 15th century, weakened by internal strife and external pressures from rival kingdoms like the Songhai. Yet its legacy lives on. In Mali and across West Africa, oral epics like the Epic of Sundiata continue to be told. Ancient manuscripts are still being uncovered and preserved in Timbuktu. Modern historians and archaeologists are now rewriting history to reflect the contributions of African empires to global civilizations. Mali teaches us that power, prosperity, and cultural brilliance aren't confined to the familiar names of history. Rome was great, but it was not alone. To understand the full richness of our past, we must look beyond the West and explore the empires that rose, ruled, and reshaped the world in silence. Conclusion. The Mali Empire was not just a powerful African kingdom, it was a global force in its time. With a complex political system, astonishing wealth, deep cultural roots, and a global trade network, it deserves to stand alongside Rome, not in its shadow. As we uncover more of these forgotten stories, we begin to see that history is far more diverse, interconnected, and surprising than we were ever taught. History didn't forget the Mali Empire. We did. If you want more stories that challenge what you thought you knew about the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more forgotten empires and hidden stories.